I'm JD. Welcome back to my channel. I'm back with the carriage clock problem, and I've got this escapement here. I got this lever escapement, straight lever escapement, and I talked to some folks that are part of the Watch and Clock Collectors Club, and one of the gentlemen said the best way to deal with this broken pivot on the bottom is to punch out that staff. So you take the staff, you punch it out, and make a brand new one. So I'm probably going to do that. So let's get at it. But I want to measure the pivot, the size of the pivot on the end there first. So to do that, I've got a Burrell pivot gauge here. It's got one jewel missing in it, but the rest of them are fine. And I'm thinking that the pivot's probably an 11 or something like that. So I'm just going to turn the light on here a bit and see if I can fit the pivot into one of these holes. Maybe it's a 14. Nope. With luck, it's a big pivot. Alright, so that's a 17. The 17 looks like it fits nicely. So I can't assume that the bottom pivot, that's the top pivot there, I can't assume the bottom pivot is also a 17, but let's go over to the 16 for a second. Nope, 16 doesn't fit, so that jewel hole size is 17. So I can assume then that the other side is probably also 17. So you see how that fits in there nicely? So size 17 for that pivot. So when I make my new pivot, I'll have to mark that as a 17. So you get your pad out like this, and I'm just going to put an arrow here and just go 0.17 millimeters. That's a 17, so that's great. I'm going to use the existing one as a sample, and I'm going to punch it out down from the long arm down to the short arm. So punch it out there because it looks like it's probably thinner on one side and thicker on the other. So it might be a screw-in one too. I'm not quite sure. So I have to look and grab that and see if it actually is a screw-in shaft. Because if it's a screw-in shaft, that could represent a whole other problem here. So let me just grab this with some pliers and check it out. So grabbing this shaft with the pliers on the end here, it's very magnetic. I grab this with pliers on the end, and as I turn this, I'm turning it sort of towards, I'm turning it clockwise, assuming that it's going to unscrew it. And I think it is a screwed in shaft, which I don't know, that could provide even more complications for me, because now I have to figure out what to do with the screwed in shaft. Like I don't think I can thread this and make a new shaft and thread it in. So this is a completely new dynamic here for this particular problem. So there, it's unscrewing here, if you can look at that. So I believe that's screwed in, and let me look at that. Now normally a watchmaker would just have a stock of shafts that he could use. Let me get the tweezers out instead of the pliers here. And let's get a little bit closer here on the mat. So there's the shaft there. And I'm going to just pull this out. So there it is there. And if I look at that, is that threaded? Looks like it might be threaded. And if that's threaded, do I have to make this part and also thread the part? Don't know. So let me have a look at this problem again. Now I also want to measure the actual hole size of the lower jewel, and I've got my very handy dandy pin gauges here. It looks like 0.17 on the bottom as well. I'm going to go for 0.18 and see what that does. 0.18's not going in, so I think it's 0.17 on the bottom as well. Try that again. Yeah, there we go. The pin gauge stands up, so that's 0.17. A little bit of side shake, so that's good, but doesn't necessarily solve my problem. And the problem I have now is that the shaft is actually threaded. So now what do I do with the threaded shaft? Do I try to punch in a new shaft and forget the threading, or what? I'll check this out. So the only option I have here is to make this part and friction fit it. I can't thread it, it's too small, so it has to be friction fit. Or you have to source a whole new lever for the lever escapement. So I'm going to try to make that new part to the exact size and friction fit that in. So now I've set myself up to cut the part. I got myself a piece of blued steel here and my tip over tool rest, and I have my sample part here. And I will just be cutting that to just under 5 millimeters and friction fitting the staff on as I cut it. And I'm just checking to see how sharp the gravers are. I think they're pretty sharp from last time. Yeah, they're really sharp. The thing is, I didn't have this tight enough, so I need to tighten this up so this doesn't move. There we go. And then measure it. Measure 15 times, cut once. So I'll be working on this part. I'm not going to bother doing the microscope for this. It's just a straight piece. And the end part needs to be just under 5 to start fitting. And then I just have to start friction fitting this. And I know that it needs to go from a distance perspective. It needs to be almost the same length as where the material is stopped. So I'll make a cut later on for my stopping cut. But let me do that right now, actually. So I use a piece of Rodico to hold the piece in place. That's the master. I move that up close, as close as I can comfortably. Leave enough material on the end for the pivot. And I'm not concerned if the pivot goes down through the piece because there's no cap on it. And then I just want to make a small groove, and that's where the item would stop. That's the stop piece right there. And then the pivot is made from there on. So let me see if I get that right here. That's where it stops, right there. And then it cones, and then there's a pivot. So I can cut that off somewhere around here. Yeah, that's about right there. That's where it stops. So now I've got to shave that down and friction fit that part. So just get this out of the way. I don't want to lose it. I don't want it to drop on the carpet. That would be nasty. So I measure this. Start off with, it looks like it's at 7. So I want to get that under 7. I want to get that to 4 millimeters. So I'll just start removing material that's tapered. So I want to remove it from the front. So I want to make a bit more of a groove right here. Yeah, I'm still around 7, so I still have quite a ways to go. And my part, just move everything out of the way here so I don't kick it. Yeah, so there's my part here, and this has got to go on like this. It's going to go on like this. So it has quite a ways to go before it gets to the right size. And let's just keep cutting. Now the fork is starting to fit on here. Which is just wonderful. I'm going to take some more material off, up a little higher. And then check the fit. And I do have to take more material off for it to fit through the back of that hole. So I'm just going to see how much I take off on the end here to make that happen. I got to trim the pivot on this side and make sure the graver doesn't go underneath the part while I'm trimming the pivot. I'm using a 4mm round end graver. I might start using a stone now because it's getting pretty close to where it needs to be, or I can use a pivot file to do some more work on it and finish it off a bit. I'll see how well the pivot file works to remove the material. It works pretty good. I've got to bring this pivot down to 0.17, so it's pretty small. I think I'll start using a stone now. think I have a ways to go, but I should measure this. Now I've got my my gauge here, and I can look and see where 0.17, what that looks like. Yeah, it's got a ways to go. I can see it's about twice as thick as it needs to be. So I'll just start working this with the stone. There we go, and I'll be back when it's close. And it's not close right now. It's quite far away, so yeah. So that's now 0.17, the pivot on the end. And I'm not sure if it's long enough, but it's 0.17, so it's, if I measured against the sample part here, where the pivot broke off. I actually think I need to go up just a little bit more. Just a bit more. Not a lot, just a bit. So I think I'm done with this part, and I'm going to use my parting tool to cut it off, and then flip it around and then work the pivot on the other side. Almost done. now I just need to put a piece of Rodico in the end and bend it. There it is. Let me just see if I can extract the part here. It's a boy. Alright, there's the part. And I got to work the pivot on the other side. So there's the part right there. And now I've got to work the pivot on the right hand side. Now I'm working the pivot on the other side. It's quite a job to get that pivot down to 0.17 like the other one before I install the fork part. And hopefully it all works in the long run. So there we go. Just keep working on this pivot here. Alright, that's it. I'm going to burnish this jewel, or burnish this pivot just a little tiny bit with my burnisher. I'm not going to do a lot on it though, just a tiny bit. Make sure I get the rounded part. There it is there. And just a little tiny burnishing of the pivot. That's good right there. And then I'm going to take it out of the lathe, they call it. Get my other glasses on here and show you what it looks like. It's on my knuckle. There's the part, folks. Super small. Hopefully that fits. I'm going to go down very carefully here so I don't drop it. And I'll pick it up with a piece of Rodico. Like that, and then I've got a stake on the other part. So let's get on with that. So that is the new part right there. So I'm going to have to put a little bit of probably Loctite on there to keep that on. And we'll see how that works. If the Loctite doesn't work, I'll maybe use Crazy Glue, but for now I'll put a little bit of Loctite on there. But first I'll grab this in the pin vise. I'm going to get a little bit closer to do this. And grab this in the pin vise. Okay, I've got that in the pin vise right now. And here is the other part, and I believe it goes fat end in first like this. So we'll go like that and then weave its way up to the tip like that. So that's pretty good there, but it's not super tight, so I want to make sure I've got that super tight. So I may put some Crazy Glue on there, or Loctite, one or the other, because it's a little tiny bit loose. So you just see what I can do here. Actually, before I lock it in, I want to trial fit it. So I'm going to just put it in like this again. And just tuck it up like that. There it is there. And I'm going to trial fit it in the clock itself. So the bridge goes over like this, and the part fits right in here. So let's see if it's too big or too small or whatever. I'm going to grab the part. And the part goes in like this. like that, and then the bridge goes on top like this. Shift it around a bit for everything to kind of fit. That might be a little tight. So I can see the pivot coming through right there. So it might be the bottom. I think I see the pivot. Maybe I don't. So hang on, look. Let me look at this with my super duper close-up glasses here, because I don't think it's fitting in the pivot right now. And that would explain why it's kind of jogged way up. No, it's not fitting right now. But I don't want to break it though. Okay, there we go. Now it's in the pivot, but I'm not sure if it's in the bottom pivot. Let me see how far down the plate has gone. You know what? That's almost all the way down. That plate is all the way down. Now, is the fork still loose? It is. So I think I may have a fit here. Yeah, I think we're good. Because the plate is all the way down and the fork is still loose, which means the jewels means it's a near perfect fit. So we're going to go with that. I'm going to remove the plate, and then I'm going to glue the damn thing in. There's the bridge, and here's the part. Make sure none of the pivots are broken. They still look pretty good. I think we have success. So that's that. But I'm going to take this out, and I'm just going to glue that because it's in there friction fit, but I don't think it's tight enough. So I'm just going to glue that in so it doesn't move. And there's the final part in the shaft, and I believe I have success. So I'm just going to glue that in. It's tight, but not tight enough for me, so I'm just going to put a little bit of maybe crazy glue in there, and that'll keep it in place, and then we're good to go. So thanks for watching this video today, and I hope you enjoyed it. All right, just to make sure this part is well secured, I'm going to use my staking set now. So I've got the center stake here, and I'll just grab world's smallest piece of Rodico and just put the Rodico where the stake is. That way I don't forget to put it in the right stake. So I just put it right there. That's good there. Alright. And now I'm going to take the pin vise that's holding the new part, put a little glue on the part, just a little tiny bit of glue on the part. And I'm only doing this because it is friction fit. I do not want this thing to move at all. So I'm just going to do this, and I'm going to apply the glue with a piece of wood. There it is there, and that should be good enough. Now I've got to get this thing back together before it's a problem. Try not to stick my fingers together. I almost did, it was close. And this stuff dries super fast. So I'm going to, the fat side goes in first. I'm going to do this. And hold it on the outside so I don't glue my fingers together. And spin it like that. And then let it go from this thing here. And then I want to put that in the staking set. Hopefully, again, I don't end up with the part glued into the staking set. Like this, grab myself a very small stake. I likely should have had that ready by now. I'll grab myself a stake like this, go right over the top of the part, like that, and a couple of wraps with my hammer. Just kind of rushing here to get my hammer. Like this. There we go. Now, I'll lift this off and let it dry. And there's the part right there. And that, my friends, should do the trick. Let us hope and pray. So I'm going to put this back in the container with the rest of the parts, and we'll deal with this tomorrow. It's looking pretty good. It's in there nice and tight. That's it.